Silence, a concept often seen as fragile, weak, or passive. But what if silence held a strength beyond measure? When you choose not to speak, not to beg, not to chase, your silence becomes louder than any words you could say. It forces a response, not from your lips, but from your heart. In a world filled with noise and constant communication, silence is a rare and unsettling presence. It confuses, it creates space, it reveals what was once overlooked. The absence of your voice, your energy, and your presence compels them to face the emotions they've long ignored. It's in this silence that true power resides. This isn't about revenge or manipulation, it's about control. Control over your emotions, control over your narrative, and most importantly, control over your peace. In Stoic philosophy, silence is a discipline, a practice of patience, and a source of inner strength. It teaches you to let go of what you cannot control and focus on what truly matters, yourself. In this video, you'll learn not just why silence matters, but how to use it as a tool for growth, respect, and clarity. I'll show you practical Stoic principles that will help you reclaim your power and find calm amidst the chaos. Stay with me and share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Let us know your story in the comments below, because sometimes the loudest message you can send is to say nothing at all. Let's begin. 1. Silence is power. Silence is often misunderstood. To many, it seems passive, like a void that fills the space where words should be. But silence is far from passive. It is a choice, a deliberate act of reclaiming control. When you choose silence, you are not retreating. You are advancing inward, creating a space where clarity and strength reside. There is an old Stoic teaching: it is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. Choosing silence is a response that shifts the power dynamic. It forces the other person to confront a truth they cannot escape, that you are no longer chasing, no longer seeking validation, no longer available on their terms. Think of this. Before, when he left your messages unanswered, you might have sent another text: "Are you okay? I'm worried about you." But now, he opens his phone and finds nothing. The last message he sees is his own. It's an unfamiliar silence, one that echoes louder than any words you could say. It's not just the absence of communication, it's the presence of your resolve. This silence doesn't just affect him, it transforms you. It becomes a shield, protecting you from unnecessary pain and reminding you of your worth. When you resist the urge to reach out, you're telling yourself, "I am enough. I deserve to be valued." Each moment of silence is a step toward reclaiming your dignity and rebuilding your inner peace. For him, silence is unsettling. Men often live under the assumption that the women in their lives will always be there, caring, understanding, waiting. Your silence disrupts that narrative. Suddenly, the comfort of your presence is gone. He finds himself scrolling through his phone, looking for your name. But you're not there. Consider this. He once believed you'd always be available. Every time he needed reassurance, he knew he could count on you. But now, he sees a photo of you smiling with friends, enjoying a life that no longer revolves around him. In that moment, a question arises in his mind: has she changed? Has she moved on? This realization is like a ripple in still water. At first, it's subtle, but with time, the ripple grows, turning into a wave of discomfort. He begins to feel the weight of your absence, a void that he cannot fill with distractions or excuses. Silence is powerful because it shifts focus. It forces the attention away from them and back onto you. Instead of spending energy explaining yourself, justifying your feelings, or trying to make them see your worth, you redirect that energy inward. In Stoic philosophy, this practice is called apatheia, freedom from unnecessary emotions. It doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you choose what deserves your care. Your silence tells him, "I will no longer fight for a place in your life. If you cannot see my value, I will not explain it to you." Moreover, silence is disarming. People expect reactions, anger, tears, or pleas. But silence? It's unexpected. It forces them to sit with their own thoughts and their own regrets. It magnifies their mistakes and leaves them wondering, "What have I done?" Let me paint you a picture. He used to ignore your calls thinking she'll call back later. But now his phone stays silent. Hours pass, then days. The realization dawns on him. You're not chasing anymore. Or imagine this. He sees a social media post of you laughing with friends, your eyes full of joy. It's a stark contrast to the image of the woman who once waited for his attention. Now you're living, thriving, glowing, and it stings him. It's not just your absence he feels, it's the presence of your growth. These moments are powerful because they show him what he's lost without you saying a word. Silence isn't easy. It requires discipline and patience. You may feel the urge to reach out, to fill the silence with explanations or reminders of your worth. But every time you resist that urge, you're practicing self-control, the cornerstone of Stoic strength. Remind yourself, I am not responsible for making someone value me. My worth is inherent, and my silence is a reflection of that. With each day of silence, you are not only helping him see what he took for granted, you are helping yourself see what you deserve. Silence is not a weakness. It is power. It is the declaration of your self-worth and the boundary that protects your peace. When you choose silence, you are not giving up, you are standing tall. And for him, silence forces him to face what he ignored, to realize that losing you is a consequence of his own choices. It's not about revenge, it's about reality. In the end, silence is a gift for him to reflect and grow, and a gift for you to reclaim your strength and dignity. Your silence, dear Queen, is louder than any words you could ever say. Let it speak. Regret in silence. Imagine this. Every morning, you would make him a cup of coffee. Not just any coffee, but one crafted with care. You knew exactly how he liked it, just the right balance of sweetness and warmth. He never thought much of it, treating it as part of his routine. But now, as he hurriedly makes his own, it tastes different. Something is missing. It's not the coffee. It's the care, the thoughtfulness, the connection that you brought into his life. This is the beginning of regret. A slow, creeping realization that the small acts of love he took for granted are no longer there. Regret doesn't strike like lightning, it's more like the tide, gradually rising until it becomes impossible to ignore. At first he might not notice the change. Life feels the same on the surface. But over time, the void left by your absence starts to expand. Stoic philosophy teaches us, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And for him, this holds true. He begins to replay moments in his mind, moments he once dismissed or overlooked. One day he walks past the bakery you loved, the one where you always chose the smallest pastries because you wanted to share them with him. On impulse, he buys a larger cake, thinking it will bring him comfort. But as he sits down to eat, it feels hollow. The taste is there, but the meaning is gone. The joy wasn't in the cake itself, it was in sharing it with you. Regret often starts in these small, seemingly insignificant moments. He notices the quietness in his day, the absence of the good morning texts you used to send, the way you always seemed to know when he needed a kind word. At first, he brushes it off, telling himself he's fine. But as the days turn into weeks, the weight of these absences grows heavier. It's like carrying a stone in his pocket. At first, it's unnoticeable, but eventually it becomes a burden he can't ignore. Silence amplifies this regret. Without your voice to reassure him, without your presence to distract him, he's left alone with his thoughts. He begins to question his choices, wondering if he made a mistake. The moments he once considered ordinary now feel extraordinary in their absence. The coffee, the bakery, the shared laughter, these are no longer routine, they are irreplaceable. For you, this silence is not about causing pain, it's about creating space for truth to emerge. Stoic philosophy reminds us, the obstacle is the way. The regret he feels is not your responsibility, it is his path to understanding. By stepping back, you allow him to face the consequences of his actions. You are not punishing him, you are honoring yourself. Think about this. The last time he took your call, he was distracted, giving half-hearted responses while scrolling through his phone. He didn't realize it then, but that was a privilege, your attention, your care, your willingness to be present. Now, his phone is quiet. The silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of your boundaries. Regret also teaches him something he may not have understood before. Love is not guaranteed. It is not something to be taken lightly or assumed to always be there. He learns, perhaps for the first time, that love requires effort, respect, and appreciation. And in the space your silence creates, he begins to grasp the depth of what he's lost. This process is not instant. It is a slow burn, a series of realizations that unfold over time. He will try to distract himself, perhaps by surrounding himself with new people or burying himself in work. But these distractions are fleeting. The regret lingers, quietly reminding him of the comfort and connection he once had with you. Let me share another moment. He's sitting at a restaurant, ordering his favorite dish. It's something you used to share, each bite accompanied by laughter and stories. Now the food tastes the same, but the experience is hollow. He realizes it wasn't just the meal that mattered. It was the person he shared it with. This is the power of your silence. It's not about making him miss you. It's about making him see what he took for granted. Regret is a mirror, reflecting the truth of his actions. And as he stares into that mirror, he begins to understand that losing you wasn't just losing a relationship, it was losing someone irreplaceable. For you, this is a time of growth. You are no longer pouring your energy into someone who doesn't value it. Instead, you are channeling that energy back into yourself. You are discovering your strength, your resilience, your ability to create a life that doesn't revolve around his validation. Regret in silence is his journey, not yours. It is his realization to face, his burden to carry. And as he learns these lessons, you are free to move forward, stronger and more self-assured than ever. 3. The value of silence. Silence is not just the absence of words. It is a presence, a force that creates space for reflection, understanding, and realization. When you choose silence, you aren't stepping back. You are stepping into your strength. It allows you to protect your energy and demand respect without saying a word. And for him, this silence becomes a lens, magnifying the value of all the things he once overlooked. Imagine this: you were always the one who planned everything. From choosing the perfect restaurant to ensuring the reservation was made on time, your care and attention shaped every moment. Now he decides to organize a gathering with friends, thinking it will be simple. But the evening is chaotic, the restaurant is overbooked, and everyone feels disconnected. At that moment, he realizes something. It wasn't just the plans that made those outings special. It was you. Your thoughtfulness, your effort, your way of making everyone feel included. These are the details he took for granted, the ones that silence has now illuminated. This is the true value of silence. It shifts the perspective. When you remove yourself from a situation, it forces the other person to notice your absence. Stoic philosophy teaches us, we are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them. In your silence, his view begins to change. He no longer sees you as someone who will always be there, quietly making everything better. Instead, he begins to see you as the irreplaceable force you've always been. Silence also serves another purpose. It reframes the dynamic. When you stop explaining, defending, or proving your worth, you show that your value doesn't need validation. This is not about arrogance. It's about self-respect. Your silence says, I know my worth, and I will not lower it to gain your attention. For him, this realization is profound. He begins to connect the dots between the small gestures you made and the love behind them. Take another example. He used to brush off the way you remembered his favorite dishes, thinking it was a simple habit. But now, as he orders food for himself, he misses the way you always seemed to know what he needed before he did. The meal tastes the same, but the experience feels empty. It's a subtle, yet powerful reminder that your presence brought a depth he didn't appreciate until it was gone. Silence is also a form of strength. It teaches patience, resilience, and the ability to let go of what you cannot control. In choosing silence, you are choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion. You are not engaging in emotional battles that drain you. Instead, you are conserving your energy for the things that truly matter. Stoics often remind us the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. By staying silent, you rise above the noise, refusing to be drawn into unnecessary conflict. For him, silence creates a mirror. It forces him to look at his actions, his choices, and his own feelings. Without the constant reassurance of your words, he is left to confront the reality of his own behavior. The quiet becomes deafening, filled with questions he must answer for himself. Why did I take her for granted? Why didn't I see her value sooner? Over time, this silence becomes a teacher. It shows him that love is not just about grand gestures or fleeting moments of passion. It's about the little things, the everyday acts of care and understanding that you gave so freely. And as he begins to grasp this, he realizes that what you offered was rare, something he may never find again. But this silence is not just for him, it's for you. It's a chance to rediscover your own value, to understand that your worth does not depend on someone else's recognition. As you sit in this silence, you begin to see the beauty of who you are, a woman who gives with intention, who loves with depth, and who deserves the same in return. The value of silence lies in its ability to reveal truths that words cannot. It's a reminder that sometimes the loudest message is the one you don't speak. It allows you to step into your power, to demand the respect you deserve without uttering a single word. And for him, it becomes an awakening, a slow but undeniable understanding of what he has lost. So let the silence speak. Let it remind him of your worth, and let it remind you of your strength. For in this quiet, you will find not only clarity but also the profound realization that you were never the one who needed to prove your value. It was always there, waiting to be seen. 4. When he finally realizes he thought your silence was temporary, a fleeting pause, perhaps a tactic to grab his attention. But then one evening, while casually scrolling through social media, he saw a photo of you. There you were, smiling, standing against a stunning backdrop, clearly enjoying a solo trip. You looked radiant, full of life, and in that instant, a thought hit him with undeniable clarity. She's moved on. She's thriving without me. At first, he might brush it off, telling himself that he's fine, unaffected. But deep down, the seeds of realization have been planted. He begins to notice how different life feels without you. Before, when he came home after spending time with friends, the quiet of his room felt like a place to recharge. Now that same quiet feels suffocating. There's no sound of your voice, no warmth in the air, no stories about your day to fill the emptiness. The silence becomes a stark reminder of your absence. In Stoic philosophy, there is a lesson. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. When you were there, he thought he had all he needed. He took for granted the richness you brought to his life, your thoughtfulness, your laughter, your constant support. Now, stripped of these comforts, he realizes just how much he depended on them. The absence of your presence highlights the depth of what he lost. Initially, he may try to distract himself, surrounding himself with friends, hobbies, or even new relationships. But these distractions are shallow. As he interacts with others, he can't help but notice the differences. Your quiet strength, your ability to understand him without needing explanation, your way of making even mundane moments special. These are things no one else offers. One day, he's out with friends, laughing and joking as usual, but when the laughter fades, he feels it, the emptiness waiting for him at home. He thought life without you would be lighter and easier. Instead, it feels incomplete. It's in these quiet moments, away from the noise, that realization strikes hardest. He begins to replay the last conversations you had, searching for clues. He wonders if there was something he missed, a signal he ignored, a moment he could have changed. Regret and realization go hand in hand, each feeding the other. He remembers the times you asked how his day was, the way you always noticed when he was upset before he even said a word. These small gestures, once overlooked, now feel monumental in their absence. Silence has a way of amplifying what words often cannot. It forces him to sit with his thoughts, to confront the choices he made. Your silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of truth. It reflects the reality of his actions and their consequences. He begins to understand that you're not just being quiet, you've chosen to stop investing in someone who couldn't see your worth. There's a Stoic saying, "What stands in the way becomes the way." For him, your silence is the obstacle that leads to his awakening. He realizes that he's been standing in the way of his own happiness, taking for granted the very things that made his life richer. Now faced with the void you left, he must confront his own shortcomings. Think of this. He remembers the way you used to text him little reminders, "Don't forget your meeting today," or "Good luck with your presentation." Those messages seemed insignificant at the time, but now, without them, he feels adrift. The care and attention behind those words weren't just conveniences, they were expressions of love. Your silence forces him to see that love isn't guaranteed. It's not something he can expect without effort or appreciation. He starts to recognize the imbalance in the relationship, the ways he failed to meet you halfway. And in this recognition, he feels a mix of regret and longing. But here's the truth. This realization isn't about you. It's about him. Your silence has given him the space to grow, to learn, to understand the depth of his own mistakes. For you, this silence is freedom. It's a chance to rediscover your own strength, to find joy in the things that fulfill you, and to live a life that doesn't revolve around someone else's validation. When he finally realizes what he's lost, it's not your responsibility to soothe his pain or ease his regret. Your silence is a boundary, a declaration of self-worth. Let it stand firm, unshaken. Because in the end, his realization is his journey, not yours. You've already chosen your path, and it's leading you toward the peace and fulfillment you truly deserve. 5. Stay silent and observe. Silence is not merely the act of stepping back. It's the art of creating space to see things as they truly are. When you choose silence, you aren't retreating. You are offering both yourself and him an opportunity to confront the reality of your relationship. It's a moment of pause, a powerful reset that allows you to observe without interference how he responds to your absence. In the quiet, truths begin to reveal themselves. If he truly values what you shared, your silence will become a mirror, reflecting his own actions. He will start to notice the gap you left, the absence of your care and presence. On the other hand, if he continues with the same indifference, this silence becomes a gift for you, a clear signal that your efforts were never truly appreciated. Either way, silence has a way of separating what is real from what is illusion. Stoic philosophy reminds us, do not speak unless what you say improves upon silence. In this moment, choosing not to speak is your way of allowing clarity to surface. It prevents the cycle of over-explaining, justifying, or pleading for understanding. Instead, you let his actions, or lack thereof, tell you all you need to know. Silence becomes your lens, bringing his true intentions into focus. Observe carefully during this time. Does he reach out, realizing the value of what he's lost? Or does he fade further into the background, reaffirming the lack of effort that made silence necessary in the first place? Silence is not meant to manipulate, it is meant to reveal. It removes the distractions and excuses, allowing both of you to see the truth with stark clarity. This is where patience becomes essential. You may feel the urge to reach out to test his reaction or gauge his feelings, but resist that temptation. In silence, you are not just observing him, you are observing yourself. Notice how you feel when the urge to communicate arises. Are you seeking closure, or are you looking for validation? The answers to these questions are just as important as his actions. They teach you about your own needs, your boundaries, and your growth. Your silence is a powerful act of self-respect. It sends a message, not only to him but to yourself, that you are no longer willing to invest in someone who does not reciprocate. This silence is your way of saying, I deserve effort, commitment, and respect, and I will not settle for less. It allows you to step back and see whether he is willing to meet you at the level you deserve, or if his indifference continues to hold you back. In this process of observation, do not look for grand gestures or dramatic apologies. Instead, pay attention to the subtler signs. Does he genuinely try to reconnect, not out of guilt, but out of a desire to rebuild? Does he take accountability for his behavior, or does he remain defensive and dismissive? The answers lie in his consistent actions, not in fleeting moments of remorse. Silence is also a way to regain control, not over him, but over yourself. By staying silent, you reclaim the energy you once spent on explanations and reassurances. You redirect that energy toward your own well-being, your own growth. This is not about him realizing your worth. It's about you realizing your own. It's about recognizing that silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. Stoics often teach, it is not the events themselves that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. In your silence, you are freeing yourself from the need to interpret his actions or words. You are simply observing, letting his behavior speak louder than any explanations he might offer. This detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. It allows you to make decisions based on reality, not on hope or assumptions. As the days go by, the power of silence deepens. You begin to see patterns in his behavior, in your own responses, and in the dynamics of your relationship. This is not a test for him, it's a revelation for you. It shows you whether his presence in your life adds value, or whether your silence is creating space for something better. So stay silent and observe. Let the quiet speak for you. In this space, you will find answers, not just about him, but about yourself. You will see where your boundaries need to be strengthened, where your priorities truly lie, and where your energy is best spent. Your silence is not just an act of withholding, it's an act of empowerment. And as you stay silent, you will find that the truth reveals itself, not through words, but through actions, or the lack thereof. 6. He can't forget you. It happens in the quietest moments. One evening as he scrolls through his phone, his eyes pause on your name. Memories flood back, the first conversation, the warmth in your voice, the way you laughed at his jokes even when they weren't that funny. His thumb hovers over the screen. He wants to send a message, to reach out, but he doesn't know what to say. The silence you've left behind is louder than any words he could write, and he worries that you might see his message as a sign of weakness. This is the power of your absence. No matter how much he tries to distract himself through work, friends, or fleeting connections, your presence lingers. Stoic philosophy reminds us, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And for him, the imagination of what could have been, of what he let go, becomes a constant companion. Everyday moments start to remind him of you. He passes by the cafe where you used to sit together, sharing stories over coffee. The familiar scent of roasted beans brings a pang of longing. Or maybe he walks past the street corner where you held hands on your first date. The cold wind brushes his face, and in that instant, he feels the warmth of your touch as if it never left. Memories like these are not easily erased. They surface unexpectedly, catching him off guard. He tries to shake them off, but the truth is undeniable. You were not just another chapter in his life. You were the part of the story that gave it depth, meaning, and light. And now, without you, every other connection feels shallow by comparison. The beauty of your silence is that it gives him the space to realize this on his own. When you were there, he may have taken your love for granted, assuming it would always be available. But now, as the days stretch into weeks, he begins to see what he's lost. Stoic wisdom teaches us, what we give our attention to grows. Without your attention, he feels the void. And in that void, his thoughts of you grow stronger. Imagine him at a gathering, surrounded by laughter and conversation. On the surface, everything seems fine, but in the midst of it all, he finds himself thinking about you. The way your laughter could fill a room, the way you always made everyone feel seen and heard. These moments of reflection aren't just fleeting. They're profound. They force him to confront the reality that no one else can bring what you brought into his life. As time goes on, this realization deepens. He notices the subtle ways you improved his world. The way you remembered the little details about his life, the encouragement you gave when he doubted himself, the quiet strength you carried even in the face of challenges. These are not things he can replace, no matter how hard he tries. But this isn't just about memories, it's about the emotions tied to them. Every time he remembers you, he feels the weight of his own choices. He starts to question why he didn't cherish you more, why he let his pride or indifference stand in the way of something so rare. This is where regret meets longing, creating a bittersweet ache that he cannot ignore. And yet, your silence remains. It is not an act of punishment, it is an act of self-respect. By stepping back, you allow him to feel the full impact of his loss. You are not begging for his attention, nor are you trying to make him miss you. Your silence simply exists, like a calm and steady force, reminding him of the value you brought to his life. Think of this. When he finally realizes he can't forget you, it's not because you tried to make him remember. It's because you were unforgettable. Your kindness, your strength, your love, all of these left an indelible mark on his heart. No matter where he goes or who he meets, the memory of you will remain. And for you, this silence is not just about him, it's about reclaiming your own power, your own peace. As he grapples with his memories and emotions, you are free to move forward, to grow, and to thrive. Because the truth is, while he may struggle to forget you, you are learning to cherish yourself in ways he never did. In the end, your silence is not a void, it is a reflection of your worth. It is the space where he realizes what he's lost and where you rediscover all that you've gained. Let it speak, let it remind him, and most importantly, let it remind you. 7. Your silence is killing him. Every day he opens his inbox, He scrolls through the messages, his heart racing for just a second, hoping to see your name. But there's nothing. Just emptiness, silence, and the growing realization that he's no longer a part of your world. This silence is not just quiet, it's deafening. It forces him to confront his greatest fear: losing you forever. Silence has a unique power. It demands attention in ways words never could. In your absence, he begins to notice things he once ignored: the way your laughter used to fill a room, the comfort of your presence during difficult days, and even the small, thoughtful gestures that made him feel cared for. Now, those moments are gone, and the silence is his only companion. Stoic philosophy teaches us, the greater the difficulty, the more glory in overcoming it. For him, the difficulty lies in facing himself, in confronting the emptiness you left behind. At first, he might try to deny it. He tells himself that he's fine and that life moves on. But deep down, the silence chips away at his defenses. It becomes a mirror, reflecting the choices he made and the consequences he now has to bear. Think about this. When you were in his life, he had the privilege of knowing that someone cared deeply for him. Your texts, your calls, your presence. These were constants he relied on, even if he never acknowledged it. Now, as the days stretch into weeks, he feels the weight of your silence in ways he never anticipated. It's not just the absence of your words, it's the absence of your care, your energy, and your love. He starts to question everything. Why did he take you for granted? Why didn't he see your worth when you were there? The silence forces him to look inward, to sit with the discomfort of regret and longing. And it's not something he can escape. Even in the distractions of daily life, your absence lingers. It's in the empty inbox, the quiet nights, and the moments when he realizes no one else fills the space you left. One evening, he might sit alone, scrolling through his phone, revisiting old conversations. He sees the messages you sent, the way you asked about his day, encouraged him when he doubted himself, and celebrated his victories, big or small. Those messages were more than words. They were reminders that someone truly cared. Now, the silence is a reminder of how much he's lost. Your silence is not just a void, it's a presence. It's a boundary that says, I will not beg for your attention. I will not lower my standards. I know my worth. And this boundary is what makes the silence so powerful. It forces him to realize that you're no longer waiting, no longer chasing. You've chosen yourself, and that choice leaves him questioning everything he thought he knew. Stoic wisdom often highlights the importance of self-control. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. In your silence, you've mastered this principle. You've taken control of your emotions, refusing to let his actions dictate your peace. And in doing so, you've created a space for him to feel the full weight of his own emotions. For him, this silence becomes unbearable. It's not just the fear of losing you, it's the realization that he already has. The thought of you moving on, finding joy without him, is a reality he struggles to accept. He might see a photo of you smiling, surrounded by friends, and wonder if someone else is making you happy. These thoughts consume him, feeding into the growing understanding that he's no longer part of your life. But this silence isn't just about him. It's about you. It's about reclaiming your power, your peace, and your sense of self. You've chosen to step back, to let him face the consequences of his actions, and to prioritize your own well-being. And in doing so, you've shown incredible strength, a strength that he cannot ignore. In the end, your silence speaks volumes. It tells him that you are not an option, not someone who waits in the background, hoping for scraps of attention. You are a woman who knows her worth, who values her peace, and who chooses herself. Let him sit in silence, let him feel the discomfort, because in that silence lies the truth he cannot escape. Losing you was his greatest mistake. And for you, that silence is a reminder of your resilience, your dignity, and your power. Let it speak. 8. Women and the power of silence. Silence is not a weakness. It is not a submission. It is the quiet yet profound way in which you reclaim your power. When words fail to make someone understand your value, silence steps in as a force that cannot be ignored. It is the ultimate expression of self-worth, a boundary that says, I will not lower myself to prove my importance to you. For women, silence is often misunderstood. Society may tell you that being quiet means you've given up. or that you're waiting passively. But in truth, silence is an active choice, a refusal to engage in patterns that drain you. Stoic philosophy teaches us, no man is free who is not master of himself. In choosing silence, you become the master of your emotions, your energy, and your narrative. You are no longer bound by the need to explain, defend, or justify your existence. Silence has a way of commanding attention. It forces the world, and those who underestimated you, to pause and take notice. When you stop giving your energy to someone who doesn't value it, they begin to feel the absence of your light. The quiet that follows is not just empty space, it's the echo of everything you brought into their life and the void left behind when you took it back. There is immense power in saying nothing. Words often lose their weight when spoken too often, too freely. But silence is deliberate. It requires discipline and strength. It is a signal that you are no longer fighting for a place in someone's life. Instead, you are stepping back, letting your absence speak louder than your presence ever could. This is not manipulation, it is liberation. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of seeking validation from someone who cannot see your worth. In silence, you find clarity. It becomes a mirror, reflecting not only their actions, but your own. You begin to see where your boundaries need to be stronger, where your energy is best spent, and where your priorities truly lie. This is not about punishing someone else, it's about protecting yourself. It's about choosing peace over conflict and self-respect over compromise. Silence is also a teacher. It shows the world that you are not afraid to stand alone. You do not need constant reassurance or attention to know your value. In a world that often equates noise with power, your silence is a radical act of self-love. It says, I am enough as I am. I do not need to prove it to anyone. For those who once had access to your light, silence can be unsettling. They begin to notice what they take for granted. The thoughtful gestures, the unwavering support, the kindness you gave so freely, all of it becomes glaringly obvious in its absence. Your silence forces them to confront the reality of their own behavior, to see the imbalance in the relationship, and to realize the depth of what they've lost. Stoic wisdom reminds us, it is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. Choosing silence is your response. It is not reactive, it is intentional. It is a choice to protect your peace, to prioritize your growth, and to honor your boundaries. It is a statement that your energy is sacred and will not be wasted on those who fail to appreciate it. As a woman, your silence is not a retreat. It is an assertion of your strength. It shows that you are confident enough to let go, wise enough to walk away, and strong enough to rebuild. You are not diminished by your silence. You are elevated by it. It allows you to rise above the noise, to find stillness amidst the chaos, and to focus on the things that truly matter. Let your silence be a reminder, not just to him, but to yourself, that your value was never tied to his recognition. You do not need his validation to feel complete. You are whole, radiant, and powerful, exactly as you are. Your silence is your shield, your sanctuary, your declaration of self-respect. In the end, silence is not just the absence of words, it is the presence of your strength, your dignity, and your unwavering belief in your own worth. Let it guide you, let it remind you, and let it show the world that you are a woman who knows her power and is unafraid to claim it. 9. When silence speaks louder than words. There comes a point where words fail. They lose their power, their meaning diluted by repetition and overuse. In these moments, silence takes its place. It becomes a language of its own, a language of strength, boundaries, and unspoken truths. When you choose silence, you are no longer trying to explain your hurt or convince someone of your worth. Instead, you are allowing your absence to convey what words no longer can. Silence has a way of reaching places that words cannot. It lingers in the spaces between thoughts, in the quiet of the night, and in the moments when he is left alone with his own mind. This silence is not empty, it is full of everything you've chosen not to say. It carries the weight of your feelings, your strength, and your decision to prioritize your peace. It forces him to sit with the consequences of his actions, to feel the impact of the choices that led to your silence. Stoic philosophy teaches us, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. In the same way, your silence embodies this principle. You are no longer debating your value or pleading for recognition. You are simply being strong, resolute, and unwilling to compromise your self-respect. This silence is not passive, it is intentional. It shows that you value yourself enough to let your actions, or in this case, your lack of action, speak for you. When silence takes the place of words, it does not mean you are without emotion. On the contrary, it means you are in control of those emotions. Instead of reacting impulsively, you choose to hold steady, to let the storm of feelings pass without allowing it to dictate your actions. This is the essence of Stoic strength, responding with purpose rather than reacting out of pain. For him, your silence becomes a mirror. It reflects back his own behavior, forcing him to confront the reality of what he has done. When you spoke, he could deflect, argue, or dismiss your words. But now, there is nothing to deflect. The silence leaves him alone with his thoughts, his regrets, and his fears. He starts to feel the weight of what he has lost, not through your words, but through the absence of them. Silence also creates space for you to heal and for him to realize. It is in this space that clarity emerges. You begin to see that your worth was never tied to his acknowledgement. You start to understand that silence is not just a response, it is a statement. It says, I will not allow your actions to define my value. I will not waste my energy on someone who does not appreciate it. And for him, this silence becomes a lesson. It teaches him that love and care are not things to be taken for granted. It forces him to reckon with the void left by your absence and to question his own actions. In the quiet, he begins to see what he once overlooked, the strength of your love, the depth of your care, and the patience you gave so freely. These realizations are not immediate, but they are inevitable. Silence does not need to shout to be heard. Its power lies in its ability to make everything else seem louder. The memories of you, the echo of your laughter, the comfort of your presence, these become amplified in the absence of your voice. He starts to see the imbalance, the moments he failed to give back, the times he dismissed your feelings. Your silence becomes the reminder of all the things he should have cherished. Stoic wisdom reminds us, it is not events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. Your silence forces him to interpret his own actions, to face the reality of what he has lost. In this process, he begins to understand that the pain he feels is not something you caused, it is the consequence of his own choices. For you, this silence is liberation. It frees you from the burden of trying to make him understand, from the exhausting cycle of explaining and hoping. It gives you the time and space to focus on yourself, to rebuild your strength, and to rediscover your own worth. Your silence is not just a reaction, it is a decision to choose yourself over someone who failed to see your value. Let this silence be your voice. Let it speak of your strength, your dignity, and your unwavering belief in your own worth. And as it speaks, let it remind you that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to say nothing at all. Silence is often misunderstood, but today, we've explored its profound power. It's not just the absence of words, it's a declaration of your worth. It's a decision to step back, to let go of what you cannot control, and to reclaim your strength. Silence forces others to confront their actions and shows them what they've lost. But more importantly, it allows you to grow, to heal, and to rediscover the value within yourself. Remember, silence isn't a weakness, it's wisdom. It's the boundary that protects your peace and the voice that doesn't need to speak to be heard. When you choose silence, you are choosing yourself. You are saying, I am enough, and I do not need to prove it to anyone. In Stoic philosophy, we are reminded, the obstacle is the way. Your silence might feel like a challenge, but it is also the path to clarity and strength. It teaches you patience, resilience, and the art of letting go. It shows you that you don't need anyone's validation to feel whole. Now I encourage you to reflect. How has silence shaped your relationships or your journey of self-discovery? Share your story in the comments below. Let others learn from your strength, your resilience, and your experience. Because in the end, your silence is not just a response, it's a transformation. It's the moment you realize that your value has always been yours to define. Let it guide you forward, stronger than ever before.